Welcome back in, everybody, to the Birds 365, a Monday, July 1st edition. Moving right along in the offseason, just 23 days away from the Eagles reporting to training camp. Joined now by Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. Jeff, what's going on, man? How you doing?
The Eagles are third fiddle in this town right now, and I'm loving it.
Third fiddle. Yeah.
Wow, that's a bold statement there, Jeff.
It's free agency season. It's baseball season. I'm sorry.
Maybe they're the third fiddle for about 4 hours. And the overnight, when everybody was sleeping, and the Sixers pull off Paul George. But yeah, I think it goes back to normal because all the heavy lifting is done for the Sixers now. So, yeah, I don't know if I agree with you on third fiddle.
For a week, they are. And, and again, I'm tired of Eagles fans jumping into my end of the woods here with the Phillies. Every loss is an Eagles loss, and baseball teams lose 60 games a year. I'm telling you, we don't have to be like this. We don't.
Well, that I agree with. I mean, yeah, baseball is a marathon, as they say, and you have to think about playing every day. And yeah, George Steinbrenner used to be that way, and treat everything like a football game, and it doesn't make sense in baseball perspective. Vic Fangio had the greatest. He was like, because Vic's a big baseball fan, so back when the NFL played 16 games, he made the comp of, think about that. Baseball plays 162. So if you lose 2 in a row in football, that's like losing 20 in a row in baseball. That's the equivalent. That's how important an NFL game is. Baseball, by conversely, you have a chance to get back, even if you lose 3 in a row, 4 in a row, whatever. Have a hiccup here and there. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. By the way, Xander, Jeff is the stat guy. We should run the stat stuff by Jeff.
We should. We can do that.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. Because he's the guy. You don't want to hear from me because I don't give a flying hoots about fantasy football numbers and things like that. But it did pique my interest, Jeff, in that NFL.com, it's list season, disrespect season, Jody used to call it. I used to call it when Jody would get upset about a particular list. NFL.com putting the top 10 offenses up there, and the Philadelphia Eagles were not in the top 10. Your thoughts?
Hot take. This is the top 10 offense. I just had to rank the top 10.
I think that's a bad season.
Yeah,
last year at 8, that's a bad season for this.
They were a top 10 offense last year, and we were flying off the handle because they were in a top 5. That's how talented this team is, and you just add Saquon Barkley to the mix. Did you lose Jason Kelce? Yes, you did, but Cam Jurgens, they feel, can at least fill that void. I just had to rank the top 20 tackles in football. I had Lane Johnson at 3 and Jordan Mailata at 6, and I'm really debating on why I put Mailata so low, but
I know.
Yeah, I know. He's a top 10 tackle in football, and they got 2 bookends there. Mekhi Becton plays guard and plays well. I think their offensive line is going to be as good, if not better, than last year. That might be a hot take, but it's possible. I mean, I don't think this team should be ranked on terms of talent anywhere lower than the top 5.
Well, I agree with that in terms of talent. So then take it in a different direction, Jeff. What would have to happen besides injuries, because that always factors in, for this team not to be a top 10 offense? The quarterback can crap.
The quarterback would have to get hurt.
So we'll take him off the table as well if the quarterback has a terrible season, obviously. But if Jalen plays just to the level he played last year, can anything take this team out of the top 10 as a potential offensive unit?
I think it would have to be, and I'll go back to a baseball thing. You would have to have A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Saquon Barkley get hurt. It'd be like the Phillies right now having Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto out. I think that's the only way you keep them out of the top 10. I mean, even if Jalen has the year he had last year, they were still a top 10 offense. if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, obviously this whole conversation changes. You need Jalen Hurts healthy.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
But you would need multiple injuries, I think, to keep this team out of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm okay with, I don't know. John's like, you're wearing an Eagles shirt. Maybe you do have Eagles color glasses, which I'm certainly open to that idea. But the Indianapolis Colts at number 10, I mean, we missed, not only did they leave out the Eagles, they left out the
They got Shane Steichen.
They
left
out
all.
the Ravens, they left out the Cowboys, they left out the Eagles, they left out the Chargers. I mean, come on here. I guess, I mean, they did leave like a little reasoning at the bottom, and it's NFL.com. That's why it's weird to me, Jeff, because it's not like some outlet looking for hits. It's the official NFL.com.
Well, the NFL's looking for hits too.
Yeah, they are. That's true. Offensive execution takes time, and Jalen Hurts said 95% of the offense is new under Kellen Moore. That's the reasoning for why the Eagles didn't make the top 10. I don't see it at all, but, maybe that is a bigger factor than I'm factoring in. Is that something that could keep this offense out of the top 10 is just how long it takes to get going?
I mean, it could, but again, I'll just go back to the talent.
I know.
It shouldn't affect it that much, right? I mean, John's pointed out, I pointed out, we just complained about an offense last year that got stale, and they were a top 10. They were 7th in points per possession last year. I'll do you one better, Xander. At one point last season, it was through 12 weeks, I think. The Eagles are actually averaging more points per game through 12 weeks last year than they were through better. 12 weeks the Super Bowl year. Yeah, it all came apart at the end of the season. So are we really putting that much stock in the end of the season that they're just not a top 10 offense anymore?
The answer to that is yes. They were better situationally. I talk about this all the time than they were in the Super Bowl season. They were number 1 in 4th down offense. I forget it was 2 or 3. You might remember, Jeff, in 3rd down offense.
They were so fun stat for you. They finished 3rd and 3rd down offense, but they were 1st the last 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah. I mean, they were better situationally, and nobody knows it because the collapse hides everything. And I get it. It was ugly. But the reality is it wasn't that bad when you compare it to the rest of the league. And part of the reason it wasn't that bad is because they just have better players than most other teams. And that's going to be the case again this year. So I start envisioning, with all those caveats, injuries obviously can derail anybody. Look at Doug Peterson's last season. So if you take the injuries off the table, if you take a big collapse from the quarterback off the table, so if Jalen plays at a similar level to last season, forget about the MVP-like season. The only thing other I can come up with, and people are going to love this, is if Saquon doesn't live up to expectations. And by that, I mean he doesn't perform at the same level as DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders. And I can't picture that. And I'm a guy who doesn't think I'm a guy who thinks the addition is way overhyped, but I think he's a better player than those guys. So
I mean, yeah, he is. I mean, he was Miles Sanders couldn't unseat the guy at Penn State. Think of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, college doesn't matter.
I know, but Saquon was always a better player than Miles Sanders.
No, I agree, and that's my point. He's a better runner that, like, I think his impact on the passing game, I'm very honest about this, is way overblown. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But as a runner, he should be better than DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders, which, by the way, was pretty good. DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders, and more consistent. And he's a better pass protector, and that should help as well. Yeah, I can't get him to outside the top 10. Again, I think 8 or 9, bottom of the top 10, would be basically a disaster for this team. So that's a lot of...
The head coach might get fired if they're 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's a lot of expectations to heap on Kellen Moore as well. And I'm sure you saw the DeVonta Smith softball game. Our buddy Ed Kratz was there. DeVonta handled the question pretty well, Jeff, about
I thought he did, yes. And wrote a good story on that.
Very deftly he handled the question. To me, when I look at that, the bigger point I get out of that is not what DeVonta said, not what Jalen said. It just highlighted how easy it was to deal with the question. So why couldn't Jalen deal with the question and what's behind that? That's how I took it.
So maybe because, again, I'm not a professional athlete. You're not obligated to speak to the media for this stuff. But man, if I was Jalen Hurts, I would have went to DeVonta Smith and said, I'm speaking. I'm going to get this out of anybody's head right now.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, by the way. Jalen was there.
Yeah, he could have done it. Like, he could just, look, I had a slip up. It's fine. And, that just, again, Jalen could have done that, could have made it easier. But look how easy DeVonta Smith just answered that question. It was like he was prepared to get that question. Like, okay.
Well, why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you be prepared? I mean, everybody knows the question is coming. That's why I think the Eagles, key members of the Eagles organization, were disappointed by it.
Yeah,
because by the way, Jalen was at an Eagles press conference where he's got Eagles PR informing him of these questions and they're coming.
Watching.
DeVonta was at his own thing, and I'm sure they did a decent job. I don't know the people, obviously, but the point is DeVonta's got common sense. He knows it's coming, and he handled it like a batting practice home run at a celebrity softball game. Easy.
Yeah. He's a professional. Honestly, like I always say, when Jalen wants to get something out, he gets something out. So he could have.
That is a good point, Jeff Kerr. He could have talked to somebody, whoever was there.
Yeah. I mean, Ed was there. I think Chris Franklin was there. You could have went to one of them and just say, "Hey, look, did I just say something to you? You can print this." I mean, you could even do that too.
Yeah, EJ was there from the Inquirer, EJ Smith. So, and maybe he did say something to EJ because the Inquirer still carries some heft. So, maybe something will come out in the ensuing week or so. But yeah, that's a good point I hadn't thought of. So I give you credit, Jeff. He was there. He could have talked to any of those guys and said,
and
just cleaned it up.
Getting asked this, like Darius Slay's been getting asked this, and he's had good answers for it. It's these guys don't want to talk about this. Oh, is there a disconnect between the head coach and the quarterback? I mean, I don't think there is, but the quarterback also likes to get his point across. Brandon Graham did it during minicamp. John, what was the question you asked him and he brings up last year?
Yeah.
I was like, wait, how did we get from one to the other here? I'm almost about to do the Brian Windhorst, like, free agency explanation.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, guys, Jalen did it. Brandon did it when I asked them both questions and they went where they wanted to go. That's easy to do. I do it all the time when somebody asks me a question. Sometimes I take it the way I want to go. That's what you should do. And that's, but he gets stuff out that he wants to get out there. There's no question about it.
A lot of professional athletes, I mean, covering the Phillies this year, like, yeah, they'll give you an answer to the question you asked, but they'll bring something else up and nothing bad. It's like, oh, okay, like, guess I'm changing my story around a little bit.
Yeah, I thought Reuben Frank brought good context to this too, though, recently. And John, it's to your credit, you've been saying this as well. If you take away those turnovers, Hurts turned the ball over 6 times in the last 5 games of the season last year. They probably could have gone 13-4, won the division, and none of these conversations would be happening.
Oh, yeah.
So, to your point, John, that you've been saying all along, they went 29-3 through the middle of 21 through, the start of 23. Nobody questioned Hurts' leadership. Nobody had a problem with it.
No one was questioning it after he beat the Bills either.
Exactly. So, look, I get it. I think it's more than nothing, as our buddy BLG said on the show. It's less than everything. but I think it is overblown. If Hurts can limit the turnovers this year, make the most of the offensive players around him, I don't think any of these questions matter at all when the season comes. I get it. It's July 1st, and we're going to talk about it when there's nothing to talk about. But to me, it just feels like it's overblown. And DeVonta had a great answer, but, Jalen's not a media – he's not a media cupcake. He doesn't love talking to the media. He doesn't give you guys much. He comes from that Saban school of rat poison. You guys are rat poison. We're all rat poison.
Which, again, I understand that, but it's part of the job. Like, you get paid a lot of money to do this stuff.
100%.
It's just part of your job. Like, look, I'm not just saying this as a media member. I don't care what he gives me, but don't
expect me to not use what you say.
Or what's the old saying? Don't give the bees a reason to swarm around you.
Right. It's a good point, Jeff.
And DeVonta Smith went to the Nick Saban school as well. And part of the Nick Saban school is dealing with it, to the point that we learned over the past couple of years from all the Alabama guys that he has a class amongst his team to deal with the media. And yeah, a lot of times if you listen to DeVonta Smith, he doesn't give you much because he comes from the Nick Saban school. But he also comes from the Nick Saban school of handling things properly. That's where Jalen Hurts is failing the Nick Saban class.
Yeah, right. You don't want to create the unnecessary controversies.
DeVonta clearly passed the class and handled it easily.
That's why he was so highly touted, not even for his talent. When he was getting drafted, like, okay, this guy knows how to handle everything. Like, I remember at the combine, people were raving about his answers and stuff. Well, this guy just gets it. I'm like, yeah, that's just who he is. Like, he's monotone, but he doesn't create any added controversy on himself. He just does his job. He takes his work pail and goes to work, and he's a consummate professional. I mean, his softball game. I went to the Verse 1 a couple years ago. I couldn't believe how well run it was. It's honestly tremendous how a well-oiled machine that thing is.
Yeah. And they do a good job. Isaiah Rodgers, too. Something about Rodgers I mentioned, Jeff. Richard Rodgers was a great softball player.
Would win
would win the Carson Wentz home run derby. Richard played baseball in college as well. AJ's a great baseball player. Isaiah Rodgers, I didn't know, and he's out there winning the home run derby. Congratulations to Isaiah Rodgers. The mystique grows even further.
He reminds me of a guy who would call his shot and say, I'm going to win this thing and do it.
And he won it. I don't know if Jake was there. Jake won it one year. Carson's won the first year, I believe. Carson's.
I heard Saquon got a loud ovation. He got loud ovation last year, and he was on the other team. But Alabama's kind of a mix. It's New York and Philly, so you kind of get. And he is from Whitehall, Copley, technically.
Well, the people love Saquon. He's a great dude. I mean, there's nothing not to like. People think I dislike him. I'm like, there's no way you can dislike Saquon Barkley as a person.
Even when he makes his subtle Giants jabs, you can't even get.
I guess some of the Giants fans can dislike him now. Well, that's going to be interesting because Hard Knocks is going to be about the Giants, and for the first time, Jeff, they're taking you through the draft and free agency, and draft. So,
you mean how the Giants don't do anything relevant at that time?
Well, I don't know if you saw the trailer, but one of the trailers at least showed Joe Shane talking to Saquon about, are you going to give us a chance? Now, there's no context to that. That could have been during last season. Saquon says the Giants never made him an offer. But if it shows up that they did, the Giants fans are going to be upset. And I'll tell you what, the best thing about that is, it doesn't matter. Who cares to the Eagles fans? But for the first time, that rivalry is going to be reignited. I think that's a good thing because that's been a dead rivalry. That was once arguably the best rivalry.
So It's funny, like the Giants' popular Twitter accounts, like Big Blue VCR and all that. They always go, "Remember when we swept the Eagles in 2000 and beat the crap out of them?" Like that was like 24 years ago. The Eagles are like 37-14 against.
Yeah, it's been like the old joke of kindling isn't a rival, a buyer. That's been the Giants and Eagles. And if that gets relevant, even though it's not relevant, I think from a talent perspective, I think that makes the NFC East a little bit more fun, at least.
Oh, it does. And look, Giants fans have every right to be mad. Saquon Barkley went down I-95, but at the same time, they did nothing to help this guy for what 6 years. Their offensive line was easily the worst in the NFL. They never got a quarterback for it. They never got receivers for the quarterback. They had the Odell fallout. They just been an absolute disaster. There are so many players that can't wait to get out of there. Why would you give them a chance? Did they deserve the benefit of the doubt from your front office? Probably not.
Yeah.
Jeff, the easiest way to make it into the playoffs in the NFL and have a good chance at going far is to win your division. Eagles are, I mean, we can talk about them all they want. The division doesn't look great to me. I think the Eagles are by far the best team in the division and should be able to handle it well. How do you see the NFC East going into this year?
I'm still not writing off Dallas yet. They still have talent. I mean, for all the drama that's going on with Dak Prescott. By the way, Dak Prescott should be paid. He's going to get paid by somebody, but Dallas really botched this up. Like Dak Prescott does not need to be making $60 million a year, but he's going to.
Oh, he will be.
Yeah, because one, that's how the market is, and two, because the Cowboys are not a smart franchise right now. They're not. They just don't sign. Their big free agent moves are looking at UFL guys because they hit a home run. They hit home runs with Devonta Turpin, so they think all of a sudden like this is genius. Or let's bring Ezekiel Elliott back. He was the worst running back in the NFL when you had him 2 years ago. He was even worse with the Patriots. So yeah, let's bring him back. That's a great fix. You lose Tony Pollard. But look, they still have CeeDee Lamb, who is holding out right now. Let's be honest. He's looking for a contract. But you still have Brandon Cooks on that team. You still have Michael Parsons. I think Stephon Gilmore might come back there, but. I mean, there's still talent on this roster. It's just I don't know if they have the Eagles level talent, but I'm not going to write them off yet.
I mean, I hope they got somebody in the room that knows how to work caps better than they have in the past because I'm counting 60 on Dak or somewhere in that range. I'm counting 36 to 40 on Micah Parsons and another 35 to 40 on CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, but I will say,
bucks. I mean,
to Jeff's point, yeah, it's a bad way to run the organization.
Oh, yeah,
You're essentially paying a tax, but I think people forget this season, they're still going to have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. They still have those players. And they're
their
really
offensive
good
line
players.
is still good, too.
Yeah. And they're still really good players. So they're not going to be a bad football team. I think everybody thinking, oh, they're going to be terrible because they haven't signed these players. They still have them. I criticize them all the time for how they run their organization. But personnel-wise, they're one of the best drafting teams. You almost have to put it in two different categories because their personnel guy, Will McKay, is one of the best in the business. And their business people are terrible.
Their two best moves, I thought, this offseason, and I love these picks, Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe. They're both with them, and they got Tyler Smith. They still have Zach Martin. That offensive line is going to be really good this year.
Yeah, so I wouldn't forget about the Dallas Cowboys. If you're an Eagles fan, they're going to be tough to deal with.
They're a playoff.
Yeah, they're a playoff level team.
You guys think they're going to get this deal done with Dak, though? Like, are they really going to go into the year with him as a lame duck quarterback? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and also the other question to that would be, does the human element come into play where you're not getting the best version of Dak or Micah or CD unless they get their contract? Now, maybe they will. Maybe
you're going to get the best version of Micah because he's playing for a huge contract.
Yeah, well, I mean, they better give it to him. Isn't he up? I mean, he's waiting for his contract too, isn't he?
He's got the 5th-year option, but yeah, it's time to pay him. But the thing
Yeah.
Yeah, I
is,
just know. I mean,
the
Mike
longer
is a
they
smart
wait,
guy. He's looking around. A
he's
lot
gonna
of
get
other
35
guys.
million. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other guys are getting their contracts, even with the 5th-year option. Look at DeVonta Smith. Look at some of these other players that are, the 5th-year option is worked into their new deal. I just wonder. I think Dak is good. I think Dak is better than most Eagles fans give him credit for. But how hard is he going to play? Is there any of the business personal side of this that's going to get in the way of the quality of football on the
You know
field?
what, Xander? This is what I would have done if I was running the Cowboys last year. I would have put the spotlight on Dak. Dak had a tremendous year. They lost in the playoffs. I probably would have said, you know what? We got a lame duck year with this guy. Look, we're really good, but man, can we get a boatload of players for him? And we trust our scouting team. We trust our draft process. Let's try to trade him and get as much as we can for this guy coming off a year where he was runner up for MVP, because it's clear we're not getting past the second round with this guy for whatever reason. We'll sign CD, we'll sign Micah Parsons, we'll look toward the future. It's almost like a soft rebuild, but they didn't do that, so now they're stuck. I don't get it.
Yeah, business. But to Xander's point about and the human effect is real. You can look at it last year with Hassan Reddick. A lot of people, was he chasing sacks down the end of the season? Maybe a little bit. You know, but one thing you're not going to see is guys totally tanking from a perspective of they might chase stats, they might get a little selfish, but they have to perform. Otherwise, they're not going to get the type of contract they want. So, in individual situations, might go chasing a sack or something like that, but still going to be an all-pro level player because he's that good. I get in trouble when I talk about Micah Parsons. Jeff Kerr's the Penn State guy, though, so Micah's a Penn State guy.
Micah, to me, Micah Parsons is the top 3 edge rusher in the NFL.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and it's not even close. Like, it's fun. I do like when Eagles fans joke Micah Parsons wants to be an Eagle so bad. I'm like, he does want to come home. He does want to play in Pennsylvania. Now, he joked it would be for the Steelers, but it's.
Well, yeah, but if the Eagles got Micah Parsons, it would be the biggest thing ever. And it should be.
Yeah,
by the way.
The Eagles getting Micah Parsons would basically be the same comparison the Eagles getting T.O. in 2004. It'd be game over.
I don't know if it'd be game over. I'm just saying from a hype perspective, the fans would get so excited, and I get so many fans saying, "Oh, he's not generational. He's not this."
He's generational.
First of all, I hate that term, but he's not this, he's not that. Yeah, he is. Talk to the players about him. They all tell you. It's one of the things Eagles fans used to put out their chest, and understandably so, because they're the only team that didn't allow a sack to Aaron Donald. And they're like, oh, he's overrated. And then you listen to Jason Kelce talk about what they did to not allow a sack against Aaron Donald.
The best football talk, and I love talking to linemen about this, is when they talk about defensive line, like edge rushers like Micah Parsons, like Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. And then you hear what the other side of the fence they say about them. It's so much of a mutual respect. They're like,
yes,
it's crazy. Like when I was ranking the top tackles, I'm like, holy crap, this guy did not allow a sack to who was Garrett Bowles. He didn't allow a sack to Max Crosby, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa. There was like, I'm like, Garrett Bowles really had a good year last year, and no one knew about it because Denver was terrible. So it's nuts when you look at that in perspective. And like you said, John, but Jason Kelce said what they do to keep Aaron Donald out of the stat. I bet Aaron Donald had a ton of pressures against the Eagles over the years.
Oh, ton. And yeah, I mean, they game planned the whole game around him, as they should have. But, and then I talk about Nick Sirianni, because Nick is very, like, nobody has a better offensive line than the Eagles during the Nick Sirianni era. So nobody in theory is better prepared to block anybody. That's how I put it when you talk about the Eagles in this era of football. with Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, etc. And Nick would go into a game saying, well, we can't block them. So read them. We can't block them. That's the Eagles saying that.
Yeah.
So think about everybody else.
Andy Reid has done it. They picked that up from Reid too. I remember last year too with the Chiefs. Remember when they were messing around with Taylor on the Jaguars? They were trying to put him at left tackle, and they signed Donovan Smith. They said, "Yeah, this isn't going to work. He can't play left tackle, so we'll move him over to the right." And they said, "Well, what are they going to do when Max Crosby moves over to the side?" He said, "Well, we got Trey Smith. We'll figure it out."
Yeah. You got to do the best you can, but
yeah,
just from the standpoint of peers talking about peers, when you're an NFL team with the best NFL offensive line and you acknowledge, well, we can't block them, so you got to figure out something else. Yeah. So that's the only point I would say about Micah to Eagles fans. He is really, really good despite the uniform he's wearing. But Darius Slay was on Chris Long's podcast, Green Lights, and
that's a great podcast, by the way. If you're an Eagles fan, I definitely recommend that.
In a lot of ways, Chris was the first from a player perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But Slay on it, I think the most interesting thing about Slay being on it was him, and we've seen this. You mentioned Brandon Graham a little bit, Jeff, and we've seen it from other players as well. And now we have it from Darius Slay. And I've been talking about this with the Vic Fangio defense forever, dating back to the Super Bowl. If you do not communicate, it will look bad. And that's what Slay was talking about. The communication on the back end did not exist. A lot of young guys rotating in and out.
You've heard it. I've heard it multiple times last year.
How do I go about it? So it was difficult, blah, blah, blah. Now, they have a lot more talent this year, but they have a lot of young guys. Are people too excited? Because Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Kaylee Ringo as a young player, Isaiah Rodgers, still a young player, first year here, though. I think people should expect some communication difficulties, especially with this defense, which is so complicated.
I'm excited about the depth on this defense because it does feel like if something doesn't work out, say a James Bradbury, he struggles again if he's still on the team, you at least have options to go to a Quinyon Mitchell or to Kaylee Ringo or Isaiah Rodgers. But yeah, you're right. It's a bunch of new pieces, but maybe having a bunch of new pieces is a good thing because they're all learning the same system together. And you do have two respected veterans in Slay and Bradbury. I'll count DeVonta Max in there too. He's been in the league now, 7 years? This is the 7th year. He's a well-liked guy in that secondary. I think that's going to play a role too. I'm more worried about the communication maybe at safety because it's new for them too with Reed and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Cooper DeJean. He's been mixing and matching at a lot of different places. See what happens when Cindy Brown comes back. But look, it's talent-wise. I love the secondary. I love what they did. But I would agree with you. I think the communication could be tough, a little rough early in the year, but I see this defense becoming really good the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit, to get going, but on both sides of the ball because of the new coordinators, Jeff. So it'll be interesting to see, how long it does take. What about the defensive line, Jeff, in terms of depth there? I've been talking to Johnny Mack about that. I feel great about Jalen Carter. I feel great about Jordan Davis. After that, I mean, I know Milton's good too, but
Milton's one of the better number 3.
I agree, but I'm saying you lost Fletcher Cox. Milton was here last year too, and he had a decent role. You're losing 700 snaps with Fletcher Cox. Are we just expecting Jalen and Jordan and Milton to collectively pick that up, or do they need more depth in that room?
No, I think they're fine there, but I just think you need your star players to be star players. You drafted Jordan Davis in the first round. He's got to be better. Jalen Carter can't fade at the end of the season. I don't think he will. If Jalen Carter's head's on straight, he's going to be everything you thought and more. I get why they did it. I've been saying this all season. I get why they did it, and the Jets thing just proves it more. But I still don't think you should have traded this on Reddick. But they did, and they didn't want to pay him. That's fine. You don't want to pay him. That's the Jets' problem now. But to just, I don't know. I feel like with a player like that, a proven pass rusher. By the way, I got to rank the pass rushers next week. I had Hassan Reddick, I think 5th last year. He's probably not going to drop much. I mean, he was very productive. He's still him and Garrett, I think, are the only 2 players with 10 plus sacks in each of the last 4 seasons. But I mean, it's going to be hard to replace that production on the edge, Xander. And I'm just wondering if Bryce Huff and company can fill the void.
By the way, real quick, you got to breaking news. Sixers and Tyrese Maxey have agreed on a 5-year maximum contract, $205 million.
Oh, it's just a party down at the
Tyrese Maxey.
Boy, I was waiting for that one. I knew that he would be top priority for that team, and it makes complete sense. What a great young player. I think the brightest part of the Philadelphia 76ers right now. So good to know they got that.
By the way, Xander, as a guy who coaches basketball, I am such a believer in fit. I don't care what level it is. I don't think you can find a better fit there than Paul George, especially since you didn't have to give up anything for him.
Wow, interesting, Jeff. So you're a big fan of the Paul George. I will say, my one concern with it is the guy's 34. Is it are we reliving Look, I was excited about James Harden too. You know what I mean? Is it a big?
Well, James Harden was a good fit here. It's just
it didn't. It wasn't the fit to get them over the top, and that's what we're done being in the second round, right? So the next move has to take us all the way, or it's going to be a bust.
This is my thing though. Like when we say Paul George's age and Paul George's injury concern, well, your star player, your MVP, is 30 with injury history. So. And this team was beyond atrocious when Embiid was hurt last year. So and now you got Andre Drummond to back him up. Look, I'm loving it personally. I think that big 3 can compete with the best of the. I'm not saying they're going to beat Boston. I'm not saying they're going to beat New York. Actually, I will say I think they will beat New York with those. But Boston, but you got a guy who could shut down Jaylen Brown and or Jason Tatum.
Yeah, well, that I don't agree with. How is a 34-year-old guy shutting down Jason Tatum or Brown? How was that happening, Jeff? Those guys are so athletic. I don't like it. I don't like it from that standpoint. The Knicks are building to stop. We had just got into because last week was Tangent Week on Birds 365. We had gotten into a Andrew Toney discussion. Who
I loved Andrew Toney.
Yeah, everybody did for that short period. And his nickname was the Boston Strangler. So what did the Celtics do? They went out and got Dennis Johnson to try to specifically match up with Andrew Toney because they knew they had to go through the Sixers in the Eastern Conference. If you're the Sixers, you have to go through the Boston Celtics, not vice versa. I don't see the wing defenders to match up with Boston.
But can Boston match up with Embiid, though? Because they had a huge problem with him last
year. I hate to say this, and I said it at the start of the show, Embiid takes care of himself in the playoffs. Nobody can match up with him from a skill standpoint.
And that's the key. That's the key to this whole thing, right? If Embiid takes care of himself,
he takes care of himself in a negative way.
Yeah. But if
in other words,
positive way.
Yeah. In other words, Hartenstein looked like a starting center against Joel Embiid in the playoffs.
And he's not. And the funny thing is Knicks fans think that he is. And I'm just like, okay, you guys, look.
He looked like it.
Yeah, he looked like it, but I don't know. I think the Andre Drummond move was huge. That was by far their best big man.
Oh, they should have never traded Andre, but
they didn't want to. That was I was told that. They didn't. They were basically telling the Nets, look, we're not giving him to you. And Morey just kind of caved at the last minute because he wanted James Harden.
Yeah, the one thing with Drummond is he can rebound, so you won't see what happened against the Knicks with Drummond on the floor.
He would have been perfect in that series last year.
I know he really would have been. And they also didn't they just draft isn't their second round pick like a big
their second round picks? Paul Reed ain't gonna be here. Like I you know what? I hate when people give like players like sport nicknames like B-ball Paul. I'm like, B-ball Paul can't play ball. So I never understood that nickname at all because he's tearing up G League guys. Like, come on, it's I was not a Paul Reed.
There are levels. If you're in the NBA, you can play, but there are levels.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
he couldn't play against.
I'm with you. He couldn't rebound. Against when they needed rebounding as bad as humanly possible. You couldn't do it. Andre can. That's I mean, he'll play 17 minutes and get 10 boards.
Another underrated signing, by the way. I know this is the Eagles show, but bringing back Kelly Oubre for the price you did is massive. He had a good year for them.
I'm not the biggest Kelly Oubre fan, admittedly. I mean, I like him. I think he's a good depth piece.
He's not a starter.
He's not a difference maker. But yeah, you're right. You do need depth in the NBA, especially when you get late in the playoffs. So yeah, it's a good depth piece. I guess you're right.
And he was a good fit for them last year.
I think Darryl did the best job he could with what he had. But you know, they're old. They're probably going to be broken down by the playoffs.
The funny thing is, John, in 2 years, is it going to matter? Because they're going to be even older, and the window's now. You got to try.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, you know, it's all on the big guy. Big guy's got to show up in the second round.
By the way, you know what? I'll correlate this to football. You know what team I think has to win the Super Bowl in the next few years, or they are royally effed?
Trying to figure out which way you're going.
Niners.
That's it. They have to do it while this guy's on his rookie contract because Brock Purdy's going to get paid if he keeps playing like this. Massive.
Yeah, I said that, and that's where Howie Roseman just gives the Eagles such an advantage, where they have this team built with everybody paid. It's unbelievable. But anyway, back just to close out the Sixers segment. Sixers did get the deal done with Tyrese Maxey, so good stuff there. But Jeff, I want to go back to the defensive line real quick. Also, we got a super chat I want to hit on from Prince. He says, Clinton Hurt making me believe Milton Williams will have a breakout season. Every time he discusses the line, he highlights Milton Williams as an underrated player. Johnny Mack and I have been talking about Milton this offseason. I think he's going to be a big piece. It'll be interesting to see if they get the deal done with him. I'm kind of waiting for it to come. Milton might be betting on himself, though, right? I mean, increased playing time this year. Chance to make a big bag of money, so maybe
I would bet on myself if I were Milton.
Yeah, I would too.
I would too. You know what player did that years ago that was a really underrated quarterback for them, but he never got like the love or the press. That was Rod Hood did that, and he got paid in free agency. But a lot of people saw what the Eagles saw, like, okay, this guy's a good cornerback. He's a starting level. Al Harris did the same thing. Al Harris ended up becoming an all-pro after he left here.
Great coach now, too.
He is a great coach. I love Al Harris, by the way. He's got great stories.
Yeah, great coverage player. I will say this is the most impressive thing about the Eagles when we talk about the Cowboys versus the Eagles from a business perspective. The Eagles convince players like A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith could have made so much more money by waiting. And I say it on the show all the time. I'd advise them to wait.
DeVonta Smith got roasted for taking the money.
I mean, he got roasted from a business perspective because he should have gotten roasted. He would have
arguably left $50 to $75 million on the table.
By the way, he had the quote of the all season. Like, money didn't matter.
Yeah, well, that's fair if that's his prerogative. But you know, to John's point, it does take two to tango. I mean, these players are willing to go to the table early, and I think they're not dumb. I mean, shit, if we're sitting here on Birds 365 talking about the money they're leaving on the table, surely they know. Yeah. Surely their agents know. You know.
Hey, Xander, I'll tell you what. If I was appointed by the Eagles, I was a football player for them, and they said, "Here, Jeff, here's $50 million guaranteed." Sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, well, they've created an environment where people want to be, and they deserve credit for that.
Everybody talks about it.
If I'm saying it, DeVonta Smith's agent is saying it. You're right, Xander. I mean, and especially this offseason when you had Jefferson and you had Chase and you had CD, you knew everybody was waiting for Jefferson because everybody knew he was going to reset the market. And he ultimately did. The Eagles didn't wait.
And the Vikings were wise to pay Jefferson when he did.
They waited too long, but everybody waits too long, except the Eagles.
They're proactive, not reactive.
Yeah. Which is a big advantage for them. It really is. I'm surprised more people, and maybe they do, maybe the Vikings were trying the entire time. I doubt it. And they paid a tax more than they would have. And the same will be the case with Jamar. And Jamar hasn't signed, has he? Jamar Chase?
He has not. He has not signed yet. By the way, I was going to bring up this 49ers point earlier, Xander. If I was the 49ers right now, I would trade Deebo Samuel and sign Brandon Ayuk. That's just what I would do. I know they love Deebo Samuel, but
I agree with you.
Too much
Brandon Ayuk's really good.
You think tread on the tires is a factor in that for Deebo? I mean, just the style of play.
Yeah, style of play. And look, Ayuk is just an ascending player. And look, if they even consider trading Brandon Ayuk, I know where Brandon Ayuk's going, and Eagles fans aren't going to like it because they're going to see him twice a year.
Yeah, well,
he's going to go play for his
Washington. Yeah, Washington.
They seem to have a good relationship.
Yeah, they have a very good relationship.
By the way, that's a dangerous trio if he was.
Yeah, I'm a big Jaden Daniels.
I actually think their two receivers over there in Washington are maybe the most underrated duo in the league. Like nobody talks about them, but that Terry McLaurin kid, he is an amazing football player.
Scary Terry McLaurin. Well, what's up with Washington?
I mean, they stink out loud every year, so nobody talks about him.
He used to be an Eagles killer, but he had a bad year last year. He kind of went back down.
I mean,
he's a very quiet guy too.
Sam Howell last year, whatever the hell.
Yeah, but he always had bad quarterbacks and he always performed. So true. It was a little bit concerning.
By the way, John, you could answer this. What is it with Washington and always having Scary Terry's? They had Scary Terry Allen, Scary Terry McLaurin.
Terry Allen, good player.
He was a good player. He was on the Vikings at one point.
Yeah, he broke out. He was I think he went to Clemson, tore his ACL. Everybody forgot about him. Then
tore his ACL again, didn't he?
Yeah, then rehabbed, and all of a sudden he was a great player again. That was back when the ACL injuries were more of a big deal, especially with running backs. And yeah, he just turned out to be a really good player. If you go back to Deebo, you remember he's a South Carolina kid. He went to South Carolina. He wanted to go back to Carolina, and there was talk that the 49ers were going to trade him. You remember he was really unhappy. And I would say to Jody all that offseason, like, be careful what you wish for if you're Deebo Samuel, because nobody's going to use him the way San Francisco uses him.
Yeah, and he's going to look like a lesser player.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm with you. IU could succeed anywhere because he gets open with traditional routes.
Yep.
It's a traditional receiver, whereas Deebo is he's the manufactured touch guy.
Yeah, he's the gadget guy,
and he needs Kyle Shanahan running things, and he was smart enough to figure that out in the end. But I'm with you. If it's one or the other, I'm keeping Ayuk.
And it is kind of funny how Brandon Ayuk, like, he was always a good player. He became a great player once Purdy became his quarterback. It's no coincidence.
Yeah, I am not looking forward to pay. You're right about that too. I'm not looking forward if I'm San Francisco to pay him $60 million a year.
No,
I'm not
either. I like him too, and I'm actually a Purdy guy. Like, I think he's a great player, but I don't know, man. He to me it more lines up with like a Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield type of deal where it's like $40 million. And you keep some of that. But if he plays like this again and they go to the Super Bowl or whatever, even go deep in the playoffs, he's going to get close to $60 million. Which is
I saw a great response to Adam Schefter today because today's Bobby Bonilla day, and he was saying how Brock Purdy's making less than Bobby Bonilla this year. And so someone said, I think it was like a Rams fan said to him, "Yeah, go tweet that in 2 years, Adam."
Yeah, he's going to be making a lot of money. Jeff, real quick, just to circle on the NFC East. We talked a little bit about the Commanders. Obviously, the Giants are what they are. Who's a bigger threat in the next year to 3 years? I mean, I think the Cowboys and the Eagles are always going to be solid teams, right there contending. I don't think the Cowboys are ever going to have like a seismic drop off. I think they'll do what they need to do to stay in at least contention.
I don't think they've had like a seismic drop off since Dave Camp was beat their head.
Yeah, right. So I don't anticipate them to. But what about the Cowboys, or what about the Commanders and the Giants? I mean, who's the bigger threat for the NFC East in the next 3 years?
Commanders. I love Jason Daniels too.
Yeah, I do too. I
think he's going to be really good, and they had a quietly good offseason. Like they're in the soft rebuild, but I'm telling you,
I like this Adam Peters too.
I like Adam Peters.
He didn't get Jeff Carson against Howie Roseman.
Yeah.
I like Adam Peters.
They got a lot of money to play with too, don't they?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to sit right next to Dan Quinn at the breakfast table at the owners' meetings, and that guy's a wealth of information, man. Like I'm just saying, everybody's asking him about this guy, what quarterback they're taking. I'm asking him about Cliff Kingsbury and Brian Johnson. His eyes lit up. He's like, "All right, let's talk some real football here," and I'm like.
Brian Johnson, does he have a chance to kind of like stick a knife in the back of the Eagles this year? He's down there in Washington.
He's assistant head coach. It's he's working with Kingsbury on the game plan, and Dan Quinn said this like straight up. Like, look, he has a blueprint because of the work he did with Jalen Hurts for a couple of years with Jason Daniels. I'm like, it's a good way to approach it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get some stats before we let you go. Hit some stat thing. Jep is the stat guy at Jep Kerr CBS. By the way, I'm under the weather for people that can't hear. I don't have my full voice, but when the uniform news came out, I immediately go to Jep Kerr because I didn't feel like doing the research. So thank you, Jep. I know the first game of the Brandon Graham era was the last time the Eagles wore Kelly Green before last season. But those weren't the 1990s Kelly Green, as Jeff Kerr tells me. Those were the 1960s version. So last year's the first year they had the Kelly Green since when, Jeff Kerr?
1995. By the way, John, here's a nice little uniform factoid for you. In Ray Rhodes' first year was the last year they wore the Kelly Green. The black outline they had on their jerseys, they kind of like slowly faded it out and like didn't tell anybody. It was
that's tremendous uniform knowledge.
It is, and it's something that you would appreciate because when the Eagles said they were bringing back that era, I said, well, they're like the Randall era. I'm like, well, Randall was on the team in '95, and you basically got rid of the black outline, so. Which one is it? I love messing with franchises when it comes to you.
Yeah, talk about minutia. There you have it. So Jeff is the stat guy. So throw some stats at Jeff.
I'll hit you with one, Jeff. What's Jalen Hurts' stat line going to be this year?
Ooh.
Or what would be acceptable? I guess we could do that.
I think.
What would you be happy with as a reporter? I know you're not a fan or whatever, but what would be an appropriate number to expect of a guy who's making $51 million, who's the leader of a franchise, who has a $175 million offense around him? What's that stat line going to look like this year?
I would take last year's stat line, honestly. I would take it.
Except the turnovers.
Yeah. Get rid of the turnovers. The yards per carry could go up a little more, but the rushing touchdowns were there. He threw – what did he throw, John? 26 passing touchdowns? Or was it 23?
Whew.
26. I'm not sure if it was let me see.
I mean, he had like 38 total touchdowns. So.
23 passing, 15 rushing, I believe.
By the way, you guys are gonna like this little Twitter drop I'm gonna do during some downtime. I looked up the most 1-yard touchdown runs in NFL history. Who do you think has it?
Most 1-yard touchdowns.
Since we criticize, since Jalen Hurts' haters like to criticize him for scoring 1-yard touchdowns. Getting 6 points on the board.
I'm going to go Emmett.
it was Emmett. So was Emmett not good because he ran for 1 yard?
No. Emmett was
Any
very
concern
good.
though that's taken out of Hurts's game this year?
I don't think
No.
it will be.
No,
I don't think
no
it will
way.
be. I think that is a weapon that the Eagles have, and not many teams don't.
So you guys don't think Jason Kelsey having no Jason Kelsey will stop that play?
I think
it
Cam
no.
Jurgens will be fine doing. But by the way, don't be shocked if Washington does a little bit of tush push.
I think the tush push is so overrated. I really do.
It's a great play. It's a 40s play. It's like a watching black and white football.
It's about messing with the other team from a mental standpoint. I think it's a great play. The Eagles were successful before the tush push with quarterback sneaks, dating back to Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz's numbers were insane, weren't they? They were like 98% or something.
And if they banned the tush push, Jeff, they would be just as successful with the quarterback sneak.
That's what I said. Ban it. It's, by the way, this is why I get so mad at football fans, because that is football. That's what your wonderful game is derived of. And people don't find it aesthetically pleasing, as Peter King would say.
Well, I don't think it is aesthetically pleasing, but so what? That doesn't mean you don't.
Exactly.
I don't think. I say all the time, the bubble screen is the ugliest play in football.
It is.
I don't advocate you should ban it because it's the ugliest play in football. I would like it banned because it's ugly, but that's tongue in cheek, not serious.
I remember Andy Reid ran one of the ugliest. John, you probably covered this game. One of the ugliest screenplays I've ever seen against the Vikings in 2001. And Correll Buckholder just took it 60 yards to the house. And Eagles blew him out like 47-17 or something. I was like, McNabb looked like he didn't know what he was doing. He put the ball behind his back because I think he was supposed to go to the other end. And I think he just sees Buckholder as like, yeah, I'm just going to flip it here. And it worked out. And Andy Reid goes, yeah, it's not how we drew it up.
Yeah.
It worked.
The Eagles were a good screen team with Andy Reid.
They're still a good screen team. He still puts them in the back pocket.
Yeah. Everybody is a good screen team with Andy Reid. Eagles are not a good screen team now, or haven't been.
No. And you know what's funny? Last year they should have used some screens.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I'm torn on that. Like, if they get Phillip Rivers, yes, I think they'd be a good screen team. They don't have Phillip Rivers.
So that is my biggest concern with the quarterback. Can he throw a short pass?
Can he? Yes. Does he want to? No. Not necessarily.
I don't care if he wants to. He probably should.
Well, if I get you to being the third-ranked offense in the NFL and getting you to a Super Bowl, there are many ways to do things. In the NFL, as you know, Jeff. I think you should try to take advantage of the player you have to the best of your ability, not force him to do what he's not comfortable with.
Especially when it works.
Like, yeah, it's like now it's a catch-22. You want him to continuously get better at what he doesn't do well. And maybe as he gets better, you start integrating it more. But I think going into it and saying, all right, we got to run 5 screen passes because we got to run 5.
I wouldn't do that. But I'll tell you what, John, this is one thing I want them to do with their quarterback this year. Let this guy take off and run the ball, because that is why he got paid a lot of money. People hate that part of the game of the court, but that's the way the position is trending. And Jalen can do it just as well as anybody.
Yeah, I'm not taking that away from him. And we'll see how he is. I don't know what. Obviously, we knew during the season he was dealing with a knee thing. But if you go all the way back to week 1, he didn't look like he had his typical juice in the running game. So something was going on.
Who was it? Who was it that hit? Jabril Peppers. I thought he got rocked on that play that he fumbled. But Peppers hit him. I'm like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he was really banged up after that play.
Potentially. But yeah, I mean, I got to take advantage of the guy I have, basically, not turning him into, oh, you got to get the ball over the middle. You got to get the ball out of his hands. Boy, I don't get that. I'll never get that. I'll never get it. Like
he's not Peyton Manning.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's not a bad thing at all. At Jeff Kerr, CBS, kept you a long time. Sorry about that, Jeff. I needed some help today, as you can tell by my voice.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I can see you need a Paul George to carry your.
Yeah,
Joel.
I need a 34-year-old Paul George to carry me. You handled it very well. I appreciate it. Make sure you read Jeff at cbssports.com. Read his Phillies coverage as well. Does a great job there. Even talks some basketball. You're getting it all. It's Birds 365, but you're getting it all.
You know what? Wait till you get my hockey takes one of these days.
Hockey takes.
I'd love Jeff. I would love to talk hockey with you. That's my sport.
I forgot to ask you your TikTok takes on the new.
That is so overblown. I said, you guys do know the best women's basketball player in the world uses TikTok like every minute of her life, Paige Beckers.
I did not know that. Who is the best women's player? Who?
Paige Beckers. I'm telling you.
She's not better than Caitlin Clark.
She's better than Caitlin Clark.
No, she's not, Jeff Kerr.
Than Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark isn't even close to being the top player. She's the most
I don't think Paige is
actually the best player in the world.
I agree with you, John.
Actually, the best player in the world right now is Asia Wilson, but Paige Beckers is better than Caitlin.
I mean, she didn't make the U.S. national team, whatever the hell it's called.
She wasn't going to make it. That team is the hardest team to make in all the Olympic sports, all the team sports.
I mean, I don't follow the women's basketball as much. I've
either do I, but I do know, like,
she's Caitlin Clark is really good too. By the way,
she's got tremendous promise, but she's not one of the best players right now.
Well, here's what I'll say about Caitlin Clark. She might not be the most talented when you're talking about Asia Wilson and some of those other women that I'm not familiar with all of them, but her impact on the game.
Oh God,
she's bigger than all of them put together, and that's just a fact. The reason that I even know these women right now, and take it for what it is. I mean, you might knock me for it, whatever. It's because of Caitlin Clark. She brought eyeballs.
There are three people that are going to really just skyrocket the NBA, the WNBA. One's Caitlin Clark. Sabrina Ionescu's been doing it. Sabrina Ionescu's awesome. Yep. She's in every commercial. Paige Beckers is going to do it too. Like, everybody's been following these three for a long time, and they're all good.
And by the way, she should have been on the team because part of it is selling the sport as well. And she's the most popular.
You know how many Caitlin Clark basketball jerseys would have sold?
Yeah, I know.
She was on that team. Like, Christian Laettner was on the freaking dream team. So I don't want to hear people say they take the back. No, I'm sorry. Isaiah Thomas was left off the dream team because Michael Jordan. So don't give me that.
Yeah. Well, Larry Bird on the original one, and everybody know by that point, Larry Bird didn't deserve to be on that team, but he was on the team because he's Larry freaking Bird.
Yeah.
I mean
Magic Johnson came out of retirement to come on that team.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of it is about selling the sport. And as a wrestling guy, I can tell you, some people connect, some people don't. I can't explain why, but some people do, some people don't. Caitlin Clark connects. It has every single WNBA record that's been broken.
Because
television ratings.
She's really good. I just don't think she's the best player in the world yet, but she's really good.
She's not.
I mean,
she's the most popular player by far.
I have league pass for WNBA, so I don't miss too many of her games, and she's really getting better. Like, I knew the Fever weren't going to be good, but her and Aaliyah Boston made such an impact on that team. Like, there's not much to work with there. And
I didn't even know. I got to tell you, I didn't even know there was a WNBA league pass. Jeff, you are unbelievable, buddy. I'm going to have to call an intervention here.
I'll have to show you my Sabrina Ionescu kicks one of these days. I wear her shoes.
All right, Jeff.
They fit better than the Jordans I have.
This has been a melting pot of all things sports today with Jeff Kerr, and I'm absolutely here for it. Great segment here on July 1st. Jeff, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you next Monday. All right, man?
Yep, you got it, guys. Hey, guys, what do we got? 22 days?
Yeah, 22 days until they report.
Yeah.
23
days to practice.
By the way, the number 3 team in town will be number 1 by the end of the week. I can't.
We'll be the number 1 team in town by the end of the day, Jeff. Who you kidding?
We're waiting for the Eagles to make another uniform announcement, and then everybody will go nuts. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Jeff. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks, bud.
There's Jeff Kerr joining us on Birds 365. Always good to talk to Jeff Kerr. I mean, that guy is just a wealth of sports knowledge and
WNBA League Pass.
I mean, this guy's got everything, Johnny Mac. He knows like the top 50 WNBA players in the world. I'm like, whew, Jeff Kerr knows his sports. That's for dang sure. So we appreciate him joining the show. As always, really good segment there. Good stuff from Jeff Kerr. So we'll go to our break. Coming back up, we have about 30 minutes left to play after the break. So I teased it earlier in the show. Johnny Mac and I are going to do our stats segment. I didn't want to go too deep into it with Jeff just because I wanted to get into it with you. We'll do it with Jeff too next week after we break it down today. But we're going to break stat projections on offense. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, John's favorite, Saquon Barkley, wide receiver 3. We'll do all that coming up next on Birds 365. If you guys are in the chat, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. James Carver's out there gifting. He's like Santa Claus today, James Carver in the chat. He's gifting everybody memberships in the chat. So we appreciate him. We appreciate everybody for being in the chat. Make sure you guys drop a like. Only 56 likes. Come on, everybody. Let's get them likes up. Let's get to at least 100 likes before the show is out. We got 30 minutes. Can we get 44 likes in 30 minutes? I know our fans. I know we can do it. Stay tuned, everybody. Birds 365 will be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.